Hello, welcome to Chick Chat and Chill. We're glad you joined us. My name is Antoinette, and I'm the owner of Pixel This, which is a full service design firm. So we have creative ways to showcase your brand, your service, your product, whatever it is. We got your back, and we're going to turn your message into a masterpiece. But before we start today's topic, I'm going to introduce my lovely co-host, Laura.
Hello, everyone. I'm Laura Fickett, your financial stress reduction coach. I love helping people make more money, manage it better, retain it to build wealth with Fickett Financial Coaching. So if you go online, you can fill out a little form. We'll do a free consultation over the phone. We'll see how I can help you. Today's topic, speaking of help, is self-care, which I'm really excited about because if you don't care about yourself, then nobody else will. That's what. That's as far that's not true. A lot of people care about you, I'm sure. But we do forget about ourselves sometimes. I know I do. I have 4 children, and I'm always thinking about them, and I'm thinking about my husband. I'm thinking about my clients. And sometimes I notice when my self-care like wanes and waxes, and I need to spend a little bit more time on my self-care. How about you, Antoinette? Do you ever forget self-care?
Oh, definitely. I'm going kind of through that now. I had my dad just recently passed away, and
Oh
I've
no.
been running around trying to do all these things and make sure my mom's in a good space. She was having some problems, and I definitely feeling extremely overwhelmed, and I think frazzled is the best um adjective. It's I definitely need just some time to care about me. And I guess what we mean by self-care is basically the proactive steps that you take for your whatever, it's your emotional health, your financial health, your um social, spiritual, like it's all encompassing. So that's basically it. But I'm definitely in need, so I'm gonna put some of these practices into
Yeah.
into effect when once we talk about them.
Well, I mean, people think like it has to be like this big, I think, extraordinary thing. We're going to go away for a spa weekend or something like that. I think it needs to be a more like ongoing type of thing. And like you mentioned, some of the categories. Think about like spiritually and socially and physically and mentally, and think about where you feel deficient. And so sometimes I don't drink coffee. So people think like I run on caffeine. Some people run on Dunkin' or Starbucks or whatever, but I don't run on caffeine. I find that listening to louder music sometimes gets me motivated, or some positive affirmations, or like we talked about in our last episode, feeding my mind with the Bible. But one of the self-care things that I've done, and it's a little bit of an exercise and it's a little bit of like self-care, is that I turn music on when I'm cooking, or I'm in the kitchen, and I just like kind of dance around and feel the music. And so it's just, if you put like really good noise canceling headphones onto, you can sing really loud and you have no idea how awful it is. And everybody else in the house can enjoy the symphony. I like to share. I like to share. But that's like, people think like self-care has to be like this grandiose thing. No, that's just a little bit of time where I'm trying to like uplift my mood, and I'm moving, my body, and I'm listening to something that I enjoy, and I'm singing. And so it's I'm not a good singer, but I don't
I
really
know.
care.
For me, like when I first think of self-care, the thing that pops in my head is I used to do every Sunday, I used to call it pamper night. So it was just like one night where I would just do those things that, I don't know, like maybe I'd put on like a facial mask and, do a deep treatment for my hair and take a really long bath. But I remember it was one of those that I would do all this stuff, and you basically get yourself as ugly as possible by adding stuff to your face so you look pretty the next day. But I remember I'd always walk out of the bathroom, and Dog would just go
Mm.
he'd purposely do this like face of horror because I had like green face on or something. But um like that's what comes to mind. It's just that thing that you do the thing with self-care, so many people do things for others, and I don't mean just physically, like, oh, I'm gonna cook somebody dinner or do something like that. People literally try to do things to themselves to change themselves for others,
Oh
which
man.
I think is so not self care. This is about, it's not about what others think you should do. It's literally to make yourself feel better, be better, things that remove stress from your life, all those things.
One of the things I remember somebody telling me is that like we're all God's children, including you. They said that to me and I was like, oh, that's true. Like he wants me to be taken care of too. And so I don't want people to think like, oh, it's a selfish topic. Like, I'm only thinking about myself. Well, sometimes you have to put your own oxygen mask on before you can put somebody else's on, or else you're going to be lying on the floor of that airplane, which I mean, if it's going down, I suppose it doesn't matter. But, but ultimately, you were talking about the face mask. Sometimes I do like a charcoal face mask, and you leave it on for like 10 minutes, and then you wash it off with like a warm cloth, and my face feels better. It feels cleaner. It's just something that makes me feel better. So physically, that makes me feel better. Sometimes just going outside and sitting in nature for 20 minutes in the sun, that makes me feel better. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money. It doesn't have to be this weekend thing. I'm a little bit more spontaneous about my self-care than scheduling it on a certain night. I know when I feel ick, ooh, like so, then I'm like, okay, what can I do just for 20 minutes? I actually think that scrolling on your phone, I don't know. I'm probably going to get some backlash on this one. I don't think that counts as self-care. I actually think the phone makes me more anxious
I
and
agree.
like I don't think it helps me like reconnect with nature or like relax or any of that kind of stuff. So I have this little like burlap sack that I put my phone in, and it's like unplugging, I think is a form of self-care.
Yeah. And I think some other, like, not like when you think self-care, things that don't come to mind, but I think even having proper boundaries for yourself is like self-care, where there's a lot of people that, you know, there's so many people tugging on them for their time or whatever, where even saying no and as a full sentence and not having to feel obligated or, oh my God, I got to do this, like that's self-care too. Like just being able to give yourself the time that you need and not always give. And just kind of back to your point about, the oxygen mask. I mean, there's plenty of places in the Bible where even like love thy neighbor as thyself. That then loving thyself is the given. Loving thy neighbor was supposed to be the lesson, but it's assuming that you're loving yourself. I mean, and I see this all the time, like so many people, especially like you get moms or something like that where they're doing all these things for their kids, but they're being nicer to the kids than they are being to themselves. And they're so quick to let themselves take the back seat and you really, kind of like you said, you really got to make sure the more happy and fulfilled you are, the better you're going to be at everything. Mothering, work, literally just life, honestly.
I was joking with somebody as I was talking about, they asked me like, oh, what's your next topic? I said, we're doing self-care. And they said, is it self-care for women or men? I said, well, it's going to be for both, right? And they were like, do men really need self-care? Yes, I believe that men need self-care. But here's the funny thing is they said, well, I think that men take care of themselves first before. And to some extent, I actually do think some people are better at it than others.
Yeah.
At taking care of themselves before taking care of anyone else. But I do think like unplugging, that's, anybody should be doing that, especially kids. I mean, you'll have to unplug them and probably the modem and everything else in the house in order to get them to unplug. But I think that that's important. And I think it's important to, think of unique ways, I guess, to unplug. So it might be sometimes I take my dog outside and I will just throw the ball for 20 minutes. You might not think that that's self-care, but it is, because the only thing I'm thinking about is like, him playing fetch, and that's it. I'm kind of like clearing my mind. I'm just kind of relaxing out there. So it could be a non-self-care activity. If I went outside and I was throwing the ball with him, but I was still on the phone or I was thinking about all these things that I have to do, then it becomes a non-self-care activity. So I think you really have to be careful if you want to do something to help yourself, it's really about like quieting your mind, making yourself feel better. Because
Yeah.
you
And
could turn any activity, like I said, if I go out there and I'm only focused on throwing the ball, then I consider that self care because I'm just relaxing and having fun with the dog. But if I'm thinking about 1,000 other things, then it's not self
yeah.
care.
I think the key point takeaway is stay in the now. Like,
Yeah.
don't be worrying about something in the future or the past. Just literally stay in the now. And I think it's so easy for people to be, torn in other directions. But I'm gonna, I guess, come clean. Like some of the things that I'm terrible with self care.
Can't wait.
No, I'm gonna keep these like fairly mellow, but I am like terrible with sleep, like terrible, terrible. I mean, to the point where throughout college, I used to sleep one night a week, and I'm not even kidding.
Oh my
Like literally.
gosh. How's
So
that possible?
so I used to be a terrible insomniac, and it's taken a long time to get myself to, give that up and sleep every night, but it's still effort to get to sleep. So every time I'm like, oh, I'm going to try to get to bed, and then I'll lie there staring at the ceiling, and then I'll think of other things. So sometimes just to cheat and take a, you
Oh
know,
boy.
like, well, you take a sleeping pill, like, I mean, like something,
One.
yeah, one, but sometimes you kind of have to fake it till you make it and establish normal sleeping
Well, I
hours.
don't know how you feel about camping, but I heard that if you go camping out in the woods for like a week, you reset your clock and you sleep better. But
In Florida, when it's 96, that might, I don't know, maybe in like cooler temps,
maybe
but
some Europeans can chime in here because they're not a fan of air conditioning. Help us out with how we can solve that problem. But I
yeah,
think like if you get up with the sun and you go to bed with the sun,
yeah.
I really do
And
think
I
it
think
does help
nature
your.
helps a lot too. Like anything in nature, I find very calming, or anything near water. Usually water is a good, like it almost like pulls the negativity out of your system, I find,
I'm sure there's some study on it, but
yeah.
I agree with you. Like I like to be near water, but I think sleeping. Man, I was just joking with my kids how like it was so hard when they were younger to go to sleep, and now the ones that are in their early 20s, like they look forward to going to sleep, and they're like, had I had known,
If only.
if only I knew.
I know sometimes the guilty pleasure is like just taking a nap during the day where you get like half an hour and you're like, you know. Um, but another thing I think I struggle with is, which you don't think about self-care, but is having an organized or clean environment. And I by no means am a neat freak. In fact, I'm kind of the opposite. So I'm one of those, like, everything kind of has to have a place. And if it doesn't, then it's all over the place.
I like that. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, but I kind of just made that up on the fly, but it's true. Like, I'm really good. Like, if I have a system, I could work it, but when there's no system, it's everywhere and it's frustrating. And then, like, then you take all this, you lose time trying to find things. I mean, do you ever get disorganized, or do you find that, you know,
You're assuming I am organized. Like,
well, I've been in your house and I could see the floor, so
yeah, it's true. It's true. I do enjoy my floor. I do have spots of disorganization, which I think a lot of people, you get that junk drawer or that basket of stuff that you just throw in there and whatever. But you're right. Like when I declutter or when I organize, even if it's a small space, that one space, like I just took everything out of my bathroom closet and reorganized it and threw away stuff that I wasn't going to use and whatever. And I felt better. And so sometimes like purging or organizing, once you get in it, you can keep going. It's just, you just have to get started with it. But I do think like decluttering your environment does declutter your mind for sure.
yeah.
So it's just, I mean, enlist a friend, I suppose, if you need help. But I try to keep, I think everything has a place and there's a place for everything. I just don't know where that place is sometimes. And so some of those things huddled together in the corner, especially mail. Like, I don't even know what to do with that stuff. Like, my email's atrocious, and mail that comes into my house too, I'm like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Filing cabinets are gone. I don't know where they went. And now I don't know how to file my stuff. Scan and store, I guess. But
Yeah.
I think decluttering is a huge one. I guess one of the self-care things that I forget about or that I forget to do is I really do forget the skincare regimen. I hate this. I mean, I do clean my face every day and things like that, but as time goes on, you can see the people that are aging gracefully and those that are not aging gracefully. And I think skincare should be a routine. And I wish it for me it was a routine because moisturizing your skin and, doing like the clay masks or the charcoal masks or things like that to unclog your pores. And I think all of that facial kind of stuff, I think that's good for men and women. And I just don't do enough. I mean, I can't even, when I was living up north, I used to do a lot more like lotion, but because everything was dry during the winter. But I don't put a lot. I wish I was in a better regimen for
I
that because that's a huge, like, it makes you feel really good.
Yeah,
But
I think
I just forget about it.
I think some people go overboard though, because sometimes simplicity is key. Where if you start being like, I have a lotion for this and a cream for that, and I'm kind of a soap and water gal, and maybe once a week I'll do something. But I think sometimes you pack so many different products and chemicals on your face, they're interacting with each other. Because sometimes I see people that go, they're sometimes the ones that are not aging gracefully have the medicine cabinet filled.
True, if
You
it
know?
makes you feel good. The other thing that I'm deficient on is I live near the ocean and I don't go to the ocean as much as I should.
Yeah.
And every time I do, if it's just sitting there, I could like be sitting in the parking lot looking at the ocean and I feel better with the windows down. But I do feel better when I go to the ocean, and that's something I don't put into my routine. I don't need to dive into the water. I don't need to just like being near the ocean.
yeah, by the water. Yeah.
The sound of the ocean, the salt air, the sun. And for those of you that are like, I hate the beach. I hate the beach. Well, okay, maybe you hate aspects of the beach. You really hate the whole beach. Like you hate the smell of the air too. Like, all right, well, maybe you do, but there's a lot of healing properties at the beach. Okay, so if you walk around barefoot on the beach, that's exfoliation for your feet. Okay,
Yeah. And grounding.
and
Yeah.
grounding, and the salt water and the salt air is good for your sinuses. It's good for your not if you like take in salt water, but
Yeah.
it's not good for you.
Don't breathe in the water. Yeah.
But the salt air,
Yeah.
like that's good for your sinuses. It's good for your skin. Like there's a lot of healing properties at the ocean, and I'm deficient on. I'm trying to think right now. Like when was the last time I went to the ocean? And it's been
You need vitamin C.
it's been a while. Vitamin D, vitamin C.
Yeah.
Yeah, vitamin SEA. So I'm deficient on that. I'm also deficient on exercise, which if you watch the podcasts, you've heard that come through. As I'm not a huge fan of gyms or anything like that, but exercise is important, and it doesn't have to be. It could just be a walk. It could be like jumping on the trampoline, like Antoinette has a trampoline in her house. I have one outside of my house. It could be swinging on a swing set. Could be taking a little bike ride. That kind of stuff is self-care.
Yeah.
Unless, you're, I don't know, you're doing it with people you don't like. I suppose that would be like, do it with people you like.
But one thing that you mentioned, which I just want a little tidbit, when you were saying about like you take off your shoes and you walking, whether it's sand or on the ground, it's called like grounding, which is a great, great cure if you have, oh, the name is escaping me. When you, jet lag.
Oh,
So if you
really?
jet lag, like a lot of times you're in one time zone and you go to another, and then you're still kind of have that, your body hasn't reached that circadian rhythm. The easiest way to get there of the time zone you're in is literally go barefoot on the ground. So tidbit.
Okay. So I'm going to be traveling to Europe, and you want me to walk around London barefoot on the ground. That seems unhygienic.
No, just go to the park and do a little pitter patter. It'll help.
If you're in Florida, though, be careful walking through the grass barefoot because I found out I'm allergic to red ant bites. Not a good scenario.
Yeah.
So
Even if you weren't allergic, I don't can see it. Oh, I love red ant bites.
I know. But I do like walking around barefoot, and I do like in the sand though. I think it's pretty
Yeah.
safe. It's pretty safe in the sand.
Yeah.
Does it work in your hotel room if you're on jet lag?
No, you got to be like ground, like
Oh.
on the, like feel the earth that has a magnetic, pull and
I'm sure there's a
energy.
funny story here somewhere. I'm sure people could like comment on this and be like, "Well, I did that, and I went into like Central Park and I stepped in poop with my bare feet." And thanks a lot, Antoinette.
My neighbor actually, when you went over his house, he made you take off your shoes. Like, we'd be like by the campfire outside. But I think another thing of self-care that I want to mention that I think people don't realize is there's probably a lot of workaholics out there where they don't realize that, they're working, working, working to get ahead and put in all these hours. Well, and I say this all the time, but newsflash, nobody ever lays on their deathbed wishing they worked more. Nobody. I can tell you that right now. And so many people are thinking of like, oh, I could put in all this time. You don't get time back. I mean, Laura
No,
Laura says this all the time, saying time, 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 time. But like you don't.
it's
And
not abundant.
the time at work shouldn't have its place. And if you find you're working really long hours, then you got to become more organized, get help. You don't get a badge of honor. People do this all the time. Do you notice this where, how are you? Busy, 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 busy. Like it's a badge of honor. Like I'm in the busy club. It just means you're inefficient, honestly. Like, but you know what I mean? Like you should have.
And we just lost every viewer we
No, but
had.
I mean, no, but I'm in the busy category too. But it's one of those like
It shouldn't be a contest.
it shouldn't be a contest
No.
who's busier. And
It's a bad contest.
ideally, I would love to be not busy. Like the end goal isn't being busy. The end goal should be having the being productive and having the free time to enjoy, the the benefits of work and family and relationships. If you keep pushing that stuff off till later, 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 you're missing a huge aspect of just joy in your life of always pushing it till next week or next month. And I think a lot of people do that. I mean, don't you find that?
Well, I mean, let's say you are busy, right? So here's something that I do. On Sunday nights, I look at my whole entire calendar for the week. And if it looks too busy, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be going from like sun up to 9 o'clock at night on Monday because I coach my workshop on Monday nights from 7 to 9 over the phone. So like Monday nights could be very busy. And if I'm like, oh, okay, I got something else on Tuesday nights, then I look at the rest of the week. I'm like, okay, what can I cut out? Because if I'm going to go from like 8 in the morning till 9 at night on Monday and on Tuesday, and then maybe I have a social event on Wednesday, like I guess I have to like cut. Thursday night has to be home. Like Thursday night has to be, I have to find some time in my schedule. I started horseback riding on Friday afternoons. That's like a form of self-care for me to end the week like on a good note, as long as I'm like have a good ride. But I look on Sunday and I plan in times when I'm gonna need self-care. So and I'll say no to things. So things will come up and I'll be like, okay, I can't. If somebody asks me to do that Thursday night, I can't. I have to keep Thursday night open, even if I'm just gonna sit there and soak my feet or put on a mask or read. Read is for me. Reading is self-care, especially a book that's like, I, I'm gonna admit this. Like sometimes I read like those teen novels because they're just like mindless for me. I'm an avid reader, so just to read something that doesn't have a lot of large vocabulary words and it's just kind of like it's fun.
Yeah.
That's
My
like
go-to for
self-care.
a long time was Cosmo. Like it was just ridiculous. Like, ooh, let's take the goofy quiz,
Yeah, it could be a magazine or something like that, but I know that. So I look on Sunday. Now I think a lot of people get super busy because they're not planning out their week, and then it would come like Wednesday night, Thursday, and they'd be burning out, So I think it really comes down to time management too, and popping in this self-care. If you're a person that's at the office and you have to sit at the desk 8 hours or 9 hours a day or something like that, then make sure when it's lunchtime, even if you brought your own lunch, make sure you go sit outside and eat lunch, or, go take a little mini walk for lunch. Or, there's a lot of people that have smoking breaks or things like that. Maybe just take a break after a certain amount of time and read a chapter in your book. Like it doesn't have to be like this big grandiose thing. It's just take a little time for yourself so that you don't get to the point where you're burnt out and you're ruining your relationships. And,
Yeah.
you know, you can't expect other people to do that for you to make you happy. People are like, oh, I'm so unhappy. And I'm unhappy with work, and I'm unhappy with my spouse or my boyfriend or my girlfriend, and I'm unhappy with the kids, and I'm unhappy with the dog. And I'm like, okay, well, you've got to be happy somewhere. And this is a place where you can do little things to make yourself happy, even just for a moment, because
Yeah.
sometimes we need it really
Well,
bad.
I think you bring up a good point too. Part of self-care is surrounding yourself with people that are good to you and for you.
Yes, true.
Where I think there's so many people, like, I don't know, whether if let's say you're single, I mean, there's a lot of people that have that fear of being alone, so they stick with people that they know are bad for them, or say mean things to them, or belittle them, or they're in jobs, nudge, nudge, that they're being, Laura's telling the story about her daughter. But where, you just want to make sure that you're always being appreciated in the places that you go, and the people you surround yourself with, because again, you kind of are the sum of, like, what do they say, like your five closest friends or people you surround yourself with. So if you're surrounded by a lot of negativity in general, you're going to be more negative. And then also kind of to piggyback on, taking breaks for lunch or stuff. A lot of times people are like, oh my God, I want to get out at a normal hour, so I'll work through lunch or whatever. But if you take that little break, you'll find you're so much more productive. So even though you might not be working the full 8 hours, if you take that break, you'll be surprised at how much like rested and happy mind is. Like, I know with creative, when I'm working on a creative project, I find that to be more exhausting than if I ran a marathon. Like, I have a lot of energy, so I could like
No
run
kidding.
marathons and like bike ride, and I'll come from the gym after 2 hours. I'm like, who wants to go biking? And everyone's like, I shoot you in the head, but like I have a lot of energy, but when it comes to creative work, like, I am spent. So if I do like a lot of creative work and someone's like, what do you want for dinner? I'm like, drool hanging out, like, don't make me make another decision. Like, I don't know.
Crazy. Creative stuff though could be self-care.
Yeah,
So you're like, it exhausts you because you're a creative person, and it probably, maybe in that field, a perfectionist, possibly. Not saying, but sometimes creative avenues. I know, like, I have paint nights at my house. Like, we just had a paint night at my house, and Antoinette was there as well. And sometimes when you're doing something creative, like, you have to only focus on that. So that's another part where we're circling back to we're quieting our mind, and we're only focusing on this, like, here and now, on this one thing. And so sometimes doing something creative cannot be exhausting. It can be self-care. But she is right about not surrounding yourself with negative people. Sometimes you can't help it, right? I mean, sometimes people in jobs or in family are negative, and so, like I said in the beginning, if you're not going to take care of yourself, like, who is?
Yeah.
I mean, you have to do it.
But
So
I think something key too, like, if there's people in your life that need to stay in your life, I think another part of self-care is forgiveness. And I think a lot of people forget that. Even if they're out of your life, so many people hold on to these, like, there was this saying by, I want to say it was like Buddha or something, where it's like, anger is like holding on to a hot coal, where you think you're going to hurt somebody, but the end you only end up burning yourself.
or drinking poison and expecting somebody else
Yes,
to
to
die.
die. And
Yeah.
exactly. And that, I think forgiveness is a form of self-care. So if you have any resentment in your life, and it could be something last week, last night, or like 10 years ago. I know there's plenty of people that things happened in their childhood. And then anytime someone brings up like a mom or an uncle, they're like, oh, like, you're really doing a disservice to yourself. And sometimes you may need professional help. You may need, call on a friend or something that will get you past whatever is holding you back in that aspect of your life or that relationship. But that's
Or you could just
100%
watch
self.
that movie Frozen, where she's like, let it
Go.
go, let it go. I told you I'm not a good singer. But forgiveness, the Bible talks about it all the time. If you want people to forgive you, you have to forgive other people. Sometimes, like, that's a hard one. And I'm like, oh, I forgive you for being ignorant and stupid. But it's still, still forgiveness. I don't hold it in. I try not to hold it in. A lot of times it's miscommunication. If you've watched a chick flick, a lot of times it's miscommunication, like where somebody's harmed you and they didn't even realize it and all kinds of other stuff. But you're right. Forgiveness is a form of self care because you're protecting yourself and your mental state by just like giving it back to them, saying, you know what, this person harmed me, but I'm not holding on to it anymore. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to leave it alone. They will be judged when it's their time.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try to be at peace. I think peace is a really important word that's you can connect with self-care. What brings you peace? And if nothing brings you peace, find something that brings you peace. Believe it or not, we have to wrap things up. So, do you have any last words, Antoinette?
No, I think the main thing we kind of touched upon a little bit, but anything that you do for self-care, like I said, it could be harm or help, like with creative, if I'm working on it as a job, it's a lot different from doing a personal project.
Right.
If you're freaking out about like food, maybe eat a bonbon and like just get, you know what I mean? Like
Never had a bonbon, but it comes up all the time.
I don't know, but it seems like in every movie, like if you're having a problem, eat a bonbon and watch it, or ice cream or something. But it's one of those where you got to keep it in perspective. Like if you go into some whole eating frenzy, it's not the thing. But keep in mind quantity and what would make you happy, and just be good to yourself. So those are my closing words, I guess.
All right. Well, next time we have a 2-part series that we're going to be recording. The first part, we're going to talk about multiple streams of income and side hustles, which as a financial coach, I love finance topics. That helps with de-stressing too. So that's going to be part 1. And then you'll have to listen to that one to see what part 2 is. It's going to be really good. So
Awesome.
Thanks for tuning in today. And remember, never stop laughing.
And never stop learning. See you next week.